Hello, everyone. My name is Kyla Schell. I am an Ayurvedic practitioner based in Idaho. So I'm in Teutonia, Idaho, just over the border from Wyoming. And I specialize in women's health, anything to do with women's health. Specifically, I'm interested in the perinatal window, so preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, as well as perimenopause and menopause. But I support individuals, women specifically, but with any kind of health concerns. Um, and Dr. Kelly and Dr. Kelsey asked me to give a little presentation about metabolic health and Ayurveda's view on that. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And if at any point you have any questions, please take yourself off mute, raise your hand, just voice your question or anything that comes up. So just to talk a little bit first about Ayurveda, Ayurveda translates into the science of life. So Ayur means life and Veda is science or the knowledge of life. And Ayurveda comes from India and it's thousands of years old. So it's this ancient wisdom that has really stood the test of time. And it's focused a lot on the whole health. So looking at the whole being, the physical body, the mind, the emotional body, the spirit, and it looks at how the patterns in nature that we can see outside of ourselves also show up within ourselves. And so it really is a lens through which we can observe and interpret the world around us. Western medicine is another lens that we can use to look at health. And so when we take Western medicine and Eastern medicine like Ayurveda and we bring them together, it gives us more of a depth of health and understanding of what's going on. Western health and science has a tendency to really zone in on specifics. So thinking about women's health, like the specific hormones, we know a lot about estrogen and progesterone specifically because of Western medicine. Whereas Ayurveda broadens the picture and puts that knowledge in place in our whole life or in context with our whole life. And another key thing about Ayurveda is that it really aims to find the root cause of a problem rather than just simply addressing the symptoms. So, two people who might have the same symptoms, like thinking about menopause, hot flashes, the root cause of why they're experiencing that might be different. And so, the education or the recommendations that an Ayurvedic practitioner might suggest could be different for those two different people. And that's because Ayurveda views each person as a unique individual. And so just because you're having similar symptoms or problems as someone else, it doesn't mean that the root cause of it is the same or the way that you would go about treating those symptoms would be the same. So thinking about metabolic health and digestion, you've probably heard this phrase before, you are what you eat. And Ayurveda takes that kind of a step further to say it's actually you are what you are able to digest. So you could be eating the healthiest, cleanest, organic, farm fresh food. But if your body is not able to actually break down that food into usable parts, absorb it into your digestive system, and actually assimilate it, then it's kind of what's the point here? If your body's not able to break down that food, that good, organic, healthy food, then your body's not able to use it. And so digestion is really a key component of health when we think about Ayurveda. And that shows up in imbalances in digestion can lead to other imbalances in the body and the mind. And so one of the root causes that Ayurveda sees as of disease is imbalances in digestion. And so those imbalances might start as things like constipation, heartburn, loose stools. It could also be our eating habits, such as eating too much or eating too little or snacking between meals. These can start to disrupt the natural rhythms in the body that can then lead to imbalances in the body and the mind, such as insomnia or inflammation or any of these imbalances that you see listed here. A lot of those can start just from the digestive system being imbalanced. And I wanted to take a moment just to look at this. There's a lot of Sanskrit words here, so just ignore that. Don't worry about that, and don't worry about all the details here. I just wanted to show a visual of how, from the lens of Ayurveda, our tissues are nourished. So in the digestive system here, our food enters into our stomach, then it moves through our small intestine, through the large intestine, and then we evacuate it out. The liver here and gallbladder, the pancreas, the spleen all play a role in that digestion. And when we start to break down the food in our body, it turns into the first tissue in Ayurveda, which is called rasa, which you can think of it as this nourishing substance that then nourishes all the other tissues in your body. So it then moves to your blood, then your muscles, your fat tissues, your bone, your nervous system tissues, and your brain. And finally, the last tissue is the reproductive tissue. And this is important because when symptoms come up where we have imbalances in our reproductive tissue, or as women, our reproductive cycle, whether that's menstrual imbalances or severe symptoms with menopause or perimenopause, that's a sign that something further up the line is off. And so if our digestion, just starting with having the food in our stomach, if something along that line of breaking down that food, there's a problem, it could create problems down the line so that our other tissues then isn't nourished as properly. And then that can create imbalances, which then causes problems. These slides are going to be shared with you, so don't feel like you have to take down or write down all the notes on these slides too, so you'll have access to them later. So when we think about digestion, your digestive fire, there's a Sanskrit word for it, which is called agni. We can use this metaphor of cooking over a campfire, like I have this picture here. So you can imagine that pot over the fire is your stomach. And inside that pot is whatever you're eating in your meal. And it goes into the pot. And your agni, your digestive fire, is the fire below that's cooking that food in the pot. It's starting to heat up and break down the food that you take into your body. The wood in this picture is the fuel for the fire, is what you ate yesterday. So as you eat, your body uses that food, turns it into energy for different things like breaking down the food of your next meal. So we want our digestive fire to be strong. If we think about that fire being too strong, where the flames are really, really high, like turning up a gas stove all the way, that food in the pot is just going to start to burn. And so that's what happens in our body. If our agni, our digestive fire, is turned up way too high, we burn through our food really quickly, and our body doesn't have a chance to use that food in and nourish ourselves. If there's too many logs on the fire at once and it kind of smothers that fire, and that fire, our agni, turns really low, then the food in this pot is just going to sit there and it's not actually going to cook. And that's the same thing that happens in our stomach. If our digestive fire is turned down too low, our food just sits. We can feel heavy and lethargic, and that food can start to ferment and not actually be broken down properly. So when we think about good digestion, we're thinking about, we want it strong, which means it's not too high and it's not too low. And agni also refers to our ability to break down our experiences as well as the food that we take into our body. So all of our experiences, all of the things we take in through our senses is broken down by agni. And we use the digestive fire agni to help reset or help that progression of nourishment through the tissues that I showed you. So if there's an imbalance, let's say like a hormone imbalance, one way to possibly address that is to actually address agni. So if we go back to the digestive fire and we can kindle agni and get agni going, get our digestion going, then we start to properly break down the food that we're eating, which then will properly nourish the other tissues down the line and then can support that imbalance that's happening, like a hormone imbalance. So some signs and symptoms of what balanced agni looks like: strong agni, that strong digestive fire. Your tongue is nice and pink. You have a healthy appetite, meaning you're hungry for your meals. You feel energetic after eating. You feel strong, bright, and vital in your body as well as your mind. So there's this natural lightness in your mind. And your stools, your bowel movements, they float. They're like shaped like a banana. There's no foul smells. It's not sticky. And you have easy, painless menses. So that's, if all of those things are there, that means that you have balanced agni. Signs that your agni is not balanced is you have this coat on your tongue, which we all kind of get a coat in the morning. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but there's can be a thick coat, white coating on the tongue, especially in the morning. And that's a sign of agni not being strong or balanced. Craving like junk food or having a low appetite is a sign of low agni. Feeling heavy after you're eating or sleepy, having symptoms like heartburn or acid reflux, as well as gas or bloating. Any aches or pains in the body is a sign that agni is not strong, as well as brain fog, low motivation, and then having sticky or smelly stools or sweat, as well as painful or imbalanced menses or menstrual cycles. So I'm going to get into a lot of details in this presentation, so by the end you might feel a little overwhelmed. So I just want to point out this slide in particular, because this is the slide to go back to if you're feeling like, I don't know where to start or I'm not sure what to do. These are some general tips just to start to connect with your agni. A lot of times when I'm working with clients, I'll ask them these questions, these 4 questions, and a lot of times they don't have answers for them. And that's okay. So the first step is to really connect with your digestion by starting to ask yourself, are you hungry for your meals? How do you feel while you are eating? How do you feel after you eat? And what are your bowel movements like? And as you start to tune into your answers to these questions, you'll begin to connect with your agni and have that relationship with your agni. And I found that with clients, once they started to find answers to these questions or even just ask these questions, they realized, oh, you know what? I'm not actually hungry for my meals, or I'm really hungry for my meals, or I don't feel good after I eat, or I don't feel good after I eat these certain foods, or I eat at this certain time. And it just starts to bring patterns up to your relationship with agni, your relationship with food, as well as your overall digestive health. So that's a really good place to start, as well as starting to engage in mindful eating habits. So mindfully eating is really just about slowing down when you're eating, being mindful of your senses. So what does your food look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like in your mouth? What does it taste like? And really focusing your whole attention on eating and nothing else. And this is more what we're striving for. And really, it's about connecting with your digestion and connecting with your food rather than trying to perfect it or have this perfection. Like, there are plenty of times where I find myself writing an email while I'm eating or watching a YouTube clip or something. And so this isn't something that we're trying to force ourselves to do. It's just something to become more mindful of. What is it that you do actually when you're eating? And how can you bring your attention more into the experience of eating, your experience with food? And part of this reason is because wherever your focus goes, wherever your attention goes, your energy goes. So if you're eating and you're focused on writing emails or watching TV, your energy is going towards watching that TV or digesting what you're watching on TV or writing that email rather than going towards your digestive system to actually break down your food. And so the more you can turn your awareness on eating while you're eating, then the more your energy, your whole body will have to actually break down that food. And then the next kind of step is, okay, so now you've connected with your digestive system. You have a little bit idea of what's going on. What are some general tips to just support general health for your agni, for that digestive fire? And the one thing is to eat more whole foods. So whole foods are foods that are in their natural state. So examples are like fresh vegetables or fruit. They haven't been processed at all. They're in their natural and complete state. And then limiting or avoiding processed foods and especially ultra processed foods. So ultra processed foods are foods that have been changed so much that they don't match their natural state. So like soda or packaged foods, they have a lot of preservatives in them. They've been altered in certain ways. And again, this isn't about perfection, but it's about mindfulness of like, okay, what am I eating? How much whole foods am I eating versus processed foods? And then moving towards eating more whole foods. And then within that, eating locally and organic food whenever possible. There's more what's called prana, more life force, more life energy in food that is local, that hasn't traveled a big difference, and that is organic. And a great website is this Environmental Working Group's website. They have the list, the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. They also have just a lot of different great resources as far as like cosmetic products and like cleaning products and clean things, information about clean water. So that's a great resource to investigate that more. A couple other suggestions is to start your day with tongue scraping. So I mentioned before that white film on the tongue. That is called ama. It's buildup of toxins in the body that naturally happens overnight. But if your agni is turned down really low, you might have more of that ama on your tongue. And so in the morning, you can get a tongue scraper, which is shaped like a U shaped. I know a lot of people have them now, but you'll start by scraping the back of your tongue from the back to the front. And you're not trying to scrape like the top layer of skin of your tongue off. It's just a gentle scrape to get that white coating off. And this also is stimulating your digestive system. It's stimulating your digestive system to wake up in the morning. And then it removes those toxins so that when you start to eat, you're not swallowing those toxins back into your body. You're getting rid of them first. And so scraping your tongue and then drinking 8 to 16 ounces of warm water is really supportive for your digestive system. So drinking this water in the morning, it flushes your kidneys and your adrenal glands as well as your digestive system. And it just gives a kickstart to your digestive system saying, hey, it's time to wake up. We're getting going. It helps to have regular bowel movements. And then again, it supports your adrenal glands and your kidneys, especially if you're a coffee drinker, just to get some water to flush through them before you take that coffee in. And the warm part is also important because cold constricts, it causes things to get smaller. whereas heat in general dilates and opens things up. So warm water helps to open up the channels of your digestive system, again, helping it to relax so that whatever nourishment you take in, it's more likely to be able to break it down and take it in. And then however meals you eat in a day. So every person is unique. So some people eat 2 meals a day, some people eat 3, some people need 4, just depending on your unique makeup and your lifestyle. But it's important to have a break between meals where there's no snacking in between. Some people kind of are like grazers and they'll eat throughout the whole day, and that doesn't give your digestive system a chance to stop and take a break. And this break between the meals helps your insulin levels to come back to normal before they spike again with your next meal. So it just helps to bring regularity and balance to the whole digestive system. And then avoid or limit cold or icy foods. Again, this is because of that constriction. So if you're drinking ice water all throughout the day, that causes the channels in your digestive system to get smaller, to contract, and it's not as easy for it to take up the nutrients that it needs. And this is like, okay, you can never eat ice cream again. You can eat ice cream again, but it's about just being mindful of like when you engage in these kind of things. So like now, summertime is a great time to like have a smoothie or to have some ice in your drink. Whereas in the wintertime where it's already cold out and your body is already exposed to that cold, might not be the best time to then bring more cold into your body. Another idea is to take a 5 to 10-minute digestive walk after meals. So this helps with the digestive process. It helps to get things moving through your body. This is especially helpful if you feel sleepy or lethargic after meals. It can help to just kind of move things along. And then another tip is to make lunch the largest meal of your day. So we can think of thinking Ayurveda likes to look at patterns in nature because those patterns tend to show up inside of us as well. So if you think about during the day, the sun rises in the morning, it's the highest in the middle of the day, and then it starts to go down towards the end of the day and to night. So when the sun is the highest in the middle of the day, it's the strongest. It's the same with our own internal sun or our own internal fire. So our agni naturally is the strongest in the middle of the day. And so eating the largest meal at lunchtime, your body has the most energy and power to break down that food. And then having smaller meals for breakfast and dinner will just support agni overall. And then again, just engaging all your senses with your food and really staying focused on your food. So these are all suggestions. If any of them kind of stand out to you, I would suggest to start with that. If any grabbed your attention of like, oh, that's interesting, maybe I'll try that, or I could focus on that. One thing I do want to mention in Ayurveda is that we encourage, as a practitioner, I encourage people to start slow. So this is a long list and a lot of things to think about. If you can choose 1 or 2 things to think about and start to incorporate and see how it feels in your body, if it feels good, keep doing it. If it doesn't feel good, then stop and try something else. So it's really important. At the end of the day, you are your biggest tool for finding health and balance in your body because you're the one that's going to know what feels good in your body and what doesn't, what feels good in your mind and what doesn't. And so these are all suggestions for you to try. If you try to do everything all at once, it's going to get overwhelming and it's not sustainable over a long period of time. So if you can choose 1 or 2 things to do for a week or 2, once it starts to feel like, okay, this is like my natural routine, this is my natural rhythm, I can keep going with this, I'm ready for something else, then you can add another thing into it and do that for a couple weeks. And so as you slowly add things in and slowly make changes in your life, the easier those changes will get and the more sustainable they'll be. Another general idea for supporting your agni is CCFT. So CCFT is cumin seeds, coriander seeds, and fennel seeds. And it's a really simple tea. It's very supportive for the digestive system. It's supportive for the urinary system as well. It supports agni overall, and it's what's called tridoshic. So it balances all of the doshas in the body. We'll talk about doshas in a minute here, but it's just balancing overall. So you mix equal parts of cumin, coriander, and fennel seeds. And then you steep 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of the seeds in a cup of hot water for 5 to 10 minutes. And this is a really nice tea to have in the morning before breakfast. If you are not usually hungry in the morning, it can help to kindle digestion. It's nice to have throughout the day or between meals. And I'll show you some variations of that later as well, just depending on what's going on in your body. But overall, this is a tea that you can drink multiple times a day, every day. It's just generally supportive of your digestion. Okay, so we've talked about agni so far and just some general signs of when agni is balanced and when it's not balanced. To make things a little more complicated, in Ayurveda, there's 4 types of digestion. So there's airy digestion, which is called Vishama, fiery, which is called Tikshna, earthy, which is called Manda, and balanced, which is called Sama. So balanced agni is, I showed those signs and symptoms before. You feel light in your body, you feel light in your mind, your tongue is pink and clean, your bowel movements are regular, there's no foul smells with them, there's no stickiness to them. Very few people have balanced agni and like completely balanced agni. We all typically tend to fall into one of these 3 other types of digestion. And you may find over time that at certain points of your life, you may have one type of digestion and then it shifts because of a life event or the life stage that you're in, that it might shift between these types. I'm not going to get too much into the doshas because that's a whole nother topic. But what I will say is Vata dosha is typically related with air. And so air is movement. You can see it like in the wind. So you can also think of Vata dosha as wind in the body. And so Vata dosha has to do with all of the movement in the body, the movement of our hormones through our body, the movement of our physical body, the movement of the food through our digestive tract. Pitta dosha is the fiery dosha, and it is mostly the fire element, and it governs all of the transformation in our body. So it governs the transformation of food into usable parts. And so Pitta dosha is very connected with Agni, our digestive fire in general. But Pitta dosha also it transforms like our experiences into our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions. And then Kapha dosha is the earthy dosha, and it is the substance of our body and also the lubrication of our body. So you can think of like the mucous membranes in our digestive tract. Our saliva is more kapha-like. And also our organs themselves are very earthy. They're very tangible. And so we're going to take a look at these other 3 types of digestion. So airy digestion, Vishama, people who have this kind of digestion often tend to forget to eat. So they might snack throughout the day, they might graze throughout the day, they might have meals at different times of the day. Sometimes they have lunch at 11, sometimes it's 3, and then the next day it's 1. It just moves a lot throughout the day. Again, that movement. And they tend to love crunchy munchies like crackers, chips, popcorn, that kind of food. is what having this kind of digestion, those kind of people move towards that. Typically, this airy digestion has more constipation, so not having a bowel movement every day. They tend to have dry, hard, pebbly stools, and they also tend to have a lot of gas, bloating, flatulence, burps, especially in the afternoon. And then some common foods that make that can either cause airy digestion or make airy digestion worse are crunchy foods, raw food, uncooked foods, processed foods that chips, popcorn, those kind of things, frozen foods, leftover foods. So leftover, the fresher the food that you can eat, the more prana it has, the more vital energy it has. As foods sit in the fridge, it loses that energy, that prana, and it just makes it more challenging for the body to digest. And when the body has a hard time digesting, it can lead to more of this gas, bloating, post-digestive effects. Other foods that increase vata dosha, increase this airy digestion, are dried foods or dried fruit, and foods that are astringent, pungent, or bitter in taste. And so astringent is like an unripe banana. Pomegranates are also really astringent. Pungent foods are spicy foods, like spicy peppers. And then bitter food, like black coffee, is very bitter. And then fiery digestion, this pitta digestion, these kind of people often get hangry. They'll be fine 1 minute, and then the next moment it's they're like, I need to eat right now, or I'm going to rip someone's head off, kind of a thing. They tend to experience low blood sugar, and they tend to eat more than 3 days, or they tend to eat more than 3 meals a day because they're so hungry. They need that fuel. They're burning through that food a lot, and they cannot ignore hunger. So the airy digestion people they forget to eat. They can go for a long time without eating and just doesn't cross their mind that they need to eat. Whereas if you have this fiery digestion, you cannot ignore that hunger. It is super strong. And people tend to have, with this kind of digestion, they tend to have loose stools. They tend to have multiple bowel movements in a day. And they tend to have more acidic, hot, burning kind of symptoms like acid reflux or heartburn. And then foods that contribute to that include any kind of fermented foods, yeast in general. So breads can contribute to that. Deep fried or excessively oily foods, acidic foods, and then foods that are pungent, salty, or sour in taste. And so, from my personal journey, my digestion has changed a little bit through different things going on with my life, but this made me laugh because like one of my favorite foods are like salt and vinegar chips. It's like that is the ultimate pitta food or fiery digestive food because they're oily, they're fried, they're salty, they're sour. And so you'll see that the type of digestion you have, you kind of go towards foods that aggravate that kind of digestion, especially if you're out of balance. As you bring your digestion in balance, then the body will start to first crave food that helps to bring balance. But then if it gets to a certain point, then it just craves more of that kind of food that will keep it going and make more of it. So Manda Agni, this earthy digestion, the characteristics typical of this kind of digestion is you're not really hungry, but you eat anyways. It's kind of like, well, this is my lunch break. I eat lunch at 12 o'clock every day. I'm not hungry, but I eat anyways. A lot of emotional eating can happen because of this digestion. Again, you're not hungry, but you're just eating because you're mindlessly eating. Maybe you're watching TV. Binge eating kind of falls into this category as well. And then post-digestion effects are constipation, but unlike the airy digestion, this constipation is more because of stickiness. So bowel movements can be sticky, they might stick to the bowl, or there might be a lot of mucus in the stool. And then you feel there's a lot more of like heaviness, lethargy, sleepiness after eating. And foods that contribute to this are more heavy foods. So dairy, meat are really heavy, potatoes, frozen foods, pasta, bread, deep fried foods, candies, cookies, chocolates, and then foods that taste sweet, salty, and sour. And so these people who have more of an earthy digestion tend to crave more foods that are sweet, whereas fiery digestion will tend to crave foods that are spicy and sour. And then that airy digestion is more of the crunchiness. And I mentioned these questions before, but these questions, these 4 questions, are you hungry for your meals? How do you feel while you're eating? How do you feel after you eat? And what are your bowel movements like? Can also help you determine what kind of digestion that you're experiencing. And so, are you hungry for your meals? If you have an airy digestion, you might say it depends. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. It changes, it moves. If you have a fiery digestion, yes, I'm very hungry for my meals. And an earthy digestion, no, I'm not really hungry. How do you feel while you're eating? Airy digestion, you might be busy doing other things, so like eating in the car while you're driving, or eating while you're working, and then that tends to make your meal longer, where you're kind of like eating a little bit here, eating a little bit there. Fiery digestion, you might be eating super fast because you're so hungry that you just need to get that food in you. In earthy digestion, you might be more distracted, like you're eating without really thinking about it. And how do you feel after you eat? Airy digestion, burpy, gassy, bloated. Fiery digestion, that heartburn, nausea, acid reflux. And then that earthy digestion, lethargic, sleepy, tired. And then bowel movements, airy digestion is not every day. It's normally hard, pebbly, dry. Fiery digestion, more than once a day. It's loose. It might even burn. And then earthy digestion might not be every day, but it's more because of that sticky mucusy. And you may find that you don't fit perfectly in one of these categories, and that's okay too. These categories are kind of there to help us see these broad brushstrokes of these types of digestion. And some people do fit in. Oh yeah, I have Manda Agni. I'm not hungry. All those mark my boxes. If it's more than one, then my recommendation is to gravitate towards the one where you have the most symptoms of, or that bothers you the most. Like if you are having really loose stools and acid reflux, but you also have gas and burping, then I would suggest moving towards whichever one of those aggravates you the most, and just seeing how maybe implementing some of the things we're going to talk about, if it changes it at all. So there's this idea in Ayurveda that like increases like. I kind of mentioned it before, but if you tend to have a fiery digestion and you really like spicy foods and you eat a lot of spicy foods, that spicy food is going to increase that fiery digestion, and it's going to make it worse to the point where you start to get acid reflux, or maybe you get an ulcer, or something happens where it starts to create more and more imbalance in the body. So if like increases like, then opposites bring balance. And so if we think about this airy digestion and these foods that increase airy digestion, we can change the foods that we eat or how we eat the food to then bring balance. And I'm not going to go over all of these. You can read these later of some ways to bring in balance, but we're bringing in these opposite qualities. So instead of crunchy foods, it's more well-cooked, well-spiced foods like soups and stews. And a big thing for airy digestion is regularity. So it's not just what you're eating, but it's having your meals at regular times. So if you tend to have meals kind of sporadically throughout the day, anchoring your meals can help to really anchor that vata dosha, which can then begin to support your digestion. For fiery digestion, it's bringing in foods that are cooling. So not cold food, but cooling foods like cucumber, mint, cilantro, or coriander. Coriander is the seed. Cilantro is the plant or the flower part of the plant. Fennel, coconut. And a big thing in general for fiery digestion is moderation. So toning things down, not so many spices, and really focusing on the type of food for fiery digestion is important. So limiting that spicy, the acidic foods, and bringing in more of these cooling foods is very balancing. And then for earthy digestion, eating more light foods. So eating a salad, that raw, crunchy salad, is going to be more beneficial for this earthy digestion and not really beneficial if you're having an airy digestion. And then also a big thing for earthy digestion is discipline. So the amount of food that you're eating, the timing of the food, the types of the food is going to be more beneficial. So not eating super late at night, making sure that you're eating earlier in the day is going to be beneficial for this earthy digestion. And ultimately, so one of my teachers used to say that you are your own book and that you have this lifetime to study your own book. And so really it's all about your experience. So all of these things that I've talked about are suggestions. Anyone else that you work with, Dr. Kelsey, Dr. Kelly, anything that they have can help point us in the right direction and give us inspiration and motivation to make changes in our life. But ultimately, you're the one that's going to know how it feels in your body and if it feels good or if it doesn't feel good, as well as in your mind and your emotions. So ultimately, these are suggestions for you to try and just to start experiment and see how it feels in your body. And I also just wanted to leave with this idea of nourishment versus restriction. So I feel like in general, women are really good at restricting ourselves, especially when it comes to nourishment and nutrition. You know, there's the whole diet culture out there of you're supposed to eat this and this only. There's so many different diets. There's so many things of like you should eat this or you shouldn't eat that. And I just want to kind of shift the lens from instead of restricting or like do's or don'ts, do eat these or don't eat these kinds of foods, is more to this lens of nourishment. Is what you're eating nourishing your body? Is it nourishing your mind? Is it nourishing your emotions? And sometimes it's hard to know, especially if your digestion is not working well or if it's imbalanced. It can be challenging to know what foods nourish you as well as what experience in life nourishes you. So the more balance, and through my own experience as well as working with clients, as their digestion comes into balance, it becomes more clear for them what nourishes them and what doesn't nourish them. And because we're all individual, what is really nourishing for one person is not necessarily going to be nourishing for the next person. So having, like I said before, like a salad with organic vegetables and fresh vegetables could be really nourishing for someone and not be nourishing for someone else. It could be actually really depleting for someone else because of the way that their body is made up and the state of their digestion. But the more that you can tune into yourself, the easier that that's going to get to be able to determine that. And ultimately, that's what's going to help you to come more into balance. And I just wanted to leave, and again, you'll get these slides, so you'll get this. I wanted to leave my email In case you have any questions, if you're looking through the slides or you're trying something out and you're confused by something or you have a question, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can check out my website, and I normally work with women over an extended period of time and really diving into different aspects of their health. So I also offer a free discovery call. So if you're interested in learning more about what Ayurveda is or how it could apply to you, you're welcome to schedule a discovery call, and we can just talk about your issues and see if it's something that you're interested as well as would be a good fit for you.